Welcome to Atlanta, where clean, old-fashioned hate has hit the diamond for the first of 3 times this year from Russ Chandler Stadium. It's the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets versus the number 6 Georgia Bulldogs. Andy Demetrum, Roddy Jones, our pleasure to bring you tonight's coverage of ACC baseball on ESPN, and our pleasure to bring you the 374th all-time meeting between the Jackets and Bulldogs. Georgia has won 9 of the last 10. Both teams, Roddy, ride into this rivalry with series wins over top 10 opponents this past weekend. For Georgia Tech, it was a near sweep of number 4 Louisville, and the sophomore Michael Goldberg continues to set the pace.
Well, he's been fantastic after spending much of the last month hitting over 500. He's down to 475, which isn't too shabby. That leads the ACC third in the nation. He's top 10 in the ACC in batting average, hits, and second in on-base percentage behind only Kyle McCann. He's been a big surprise for Georgia Tech this year in terms of just the level of production. He's been a big reason why Georgia Tech's been so good.
Speaking of surprises, how about the center fielder Tucker Maxwell for the Bulldogs?
Well, he's hitting in the 9-hole, but with those 6 home runs, you wouldn't know it. Slugging percentage at .681 on the season. He has been incredible, setting the table, being almost that second leadoff hitter. 11 for 11 in stolen bases this year. He's a terror on the base pass. He's done a great job of propelling one of the best offenses in the entire country in the Georgia Bulldogs.
A Georgia team that took 2 out of 3 in front of 3 sold-out crowds at Foley Field versus number 10 LSU this weekend. Here's their batting order. Cam Shepard leads off, followed by Riley King and the preseason All-American Aaron Shuck. LJ Talley at .398, the 4th best batting average in the SEC. John Cable had a big grand slam in that series-clinching win over the Tigers. Austin Bigger catches, followed by Rogers Jernigan and the aforementioned Tucker Maxwell. And on the mound tonight for Georgia Tech, guy who is a veteran of college baseball but a newcomer to this rivalry, that's the junior Amos Willingham.
Yeah, Willingham was a guy that Georgia Tech knew had experience, but they didn't know exactly what they were going to get out of him this year. But as you can see from those stats right there, he has been very good in the midweek for Georgia Tech. 3-0 in his starts. Georgia Tech undefeated under Danny Hall in the midweek this season. See that 3.38 ERA, only 3 walks on the year. His last time out, 6 innings pitched, only gave up 1 earned run, and this is the defense that'll be behind him.
A defense that Danny Hall bestowed a lot of praise on for their performance in Louisville. Hall, Wilhite, and Radcliffe across the outfield. Serratos, Waddell, Wilhite, and Tristan English, the preseason All-American. At first base, Kyle McCann catches for Willingham. Leads the ACC in walks allowed per 9 innings. Georgia's won 6 straight over the Jackets. It's their longest winning streak in this series since 1986 and off to their best start since 2009. And as Danny Hall told us before the game, Roddy, very important when you face this lineup for Willingham to land strike 1. And also, he wants to see Amos connect on strike 1 with his secondary pitches. He'll throw fastball, but also mix in a curveball and changeup.
And this will be the most emotionally charged atmosphere that Amos Willingham has pitched in, certainly in his Georgia Tech career. This is going to have a weekend series, a postseason type feel to it. Georgia Bulldogs, obviously your big rival, but also you've got a top 5 team in the entire country in some polls coming in here to Russ Chandler Stadium.
After that 2-1 series victory, booted number 4 Louisville, who occupies number 4 now. 1 poll at least, but the Georgia Bulldogs, number 6 in the coaches' poll as Cam Shepard climbs in. As Willingham gets game 1 of this series underway, and it's a ball inside. So you have Willingham, who allows the fewest walks per 9 innings in the ACC, versus Cam Shepard, the junior, who's tied for the SEC lead in walks as he strokes this into the gap. Extra bases for Shepard as he turns through first. Scunned in from the wall, but it's a leadoff double for Cam Shepard in the Bulldogs.
Just a great job of hitting. The ball's on the outside corner. He drives it into the gap. Easy double to start off the game for the University of Georgia. And Amos Willingham is just going to, after giving up a double like that to start the game, you've got to settle yourself and get into this ball game. 1 run's not going to kill you here. You just got to prevent it from being a big inning here early.
Sets up the right fielder, Riley King. And snapped off for a strike. King, who had a terrific fall, the sophomore from Lawrenceville. A sac fly versus LSU on Saturday. Man who's been hampered by injuries most of his first 2 years in Athens. A lot of gray skies, as you can tell, to begin this game. The rain has been off and on for most of this afternoon and into early evening. Hopefully will not result in any interruption of play. And Willingham brings up King. As McCann held onto it, no throw needed to first. Georgia Tech got 2 terrific starts over the weekend in Louisville from Xavion Curry and Connor Thomas, who was named ACC Pitcher of the Week. Could not quite close the door in that third game as you look at Scott Strickland. He and Danny Hall, Georgia Tech head coach, forever intertwined. Are they not?
They certainly are. Scott Strickland, having played for Danny Hall, having been the hitting coach here at Georgia Tech, and you mentioned the pitching performances that Georgia Tech got this weekend. He'll be pleased with the pitching performances that he got this past weekend from Emerson Hancock, C.J. Smith, and Tony Losi.
And a two-way star in the man in the batter's box, Aaron Shunk. 10 saves, and at the plate, batting .312. Yeah, round up .313.
Yeah, exactly. 312.
It is hard enough to hit a baseball. You're not going to cheat anybody out of any point in their batting average. Bounces that wide at third, 0-2. Shunk homered against the Yellow Jackets last year at SunTrust Park. Preseason first-team All-SEC at third base. He was a finalist for the John Olerud Award last year, honoring the nation's top two-way player.
And the start he's gotten off to this year, both at the plate and on the mound. He'll be right in the conversation for that again this year.
Willingham fires the 0-2. That's banged into the gap, almost exact same location as Shepard. Shepard comes around third, and he scores. And the Bulldogs are on the board in the first.
Just another great piece of hitting. Shunk going the other way. Amos Willingham, I liked where he's been placing the ball. That ball's on the outside corner of the plate. Breaking pitch. He's a little disappointed. Probably wanted it a little bit further off, but Shunk doing a great job of staying back on it, driving it into the gap, and Georgia is on the board and still threatening with the runner in scoring position.
RBI is Shunk's 20th of the season. It brings up the left-hander L.J. Talley in that .398 average. He looks at ball one down and away. Talley, the senior from Folkestone, Georgia. Also fourth in the SEC in on-base percentage. (2-0). Georgia does not make it easy for opposing pitchers to ease into ball games. With that RBI, they have now outscored opponents 20-1 in the first inning. 34-3 in the first two. Got on and missed by Talley, 2-1.
With the way that they've pitched this year, it's no surprise that they're in the top 10 and in most rankings in the top 6. So when you're able to jump out ahead, it allows those starting pitchers that we mentioned to pitch from ahead, and then their bullpen's been fantastic as well.
A jam shot off the plate. It dribbles foul. Talley making his 161st career start. All SEC a year ago for a Georgia team that earned the number 8 national seed but couldn't get out of its own regional. They fell to Duke. And 5-1 in the SEC through 2 weekends. Georgia Tech 5-4 in the ACC. And the 2-2 from Willingham. Cut on and missed. Got a late swing from Talley, and it's a second strikeout of the first for Willingham.
Talley was either indecisive or just a little bit caught off guard by that fastball in the outside corner. Tried to just foul it off. Was not able to get bat on it. Amos Willingham's 1 out away from getting out of this.
Feast or famine for Willingham in the first. He's allowed 2 doubles. He struck out a pair and now faces the graduate student John Cable, native of nearby Roswell, Georgia. And a big grand slam Sunday versus LSU, his second grand slam of the season. And 9-7 win over the Tigers. 3 home runs, 15 driven in.
Andy, you mentioned the fact that Georgia started off 5-1 in SEC play. The most impressive part of that, it's not like they've eased into SEC play. I mean, they were at South Carolina, who was ranked in the top 25 at the time, played number 10 LSU last weekend. Had that sweep of Carolina, and then after dropping the Friday game against LSU, we were able to win the next 2 behind some great pitching performances. This is a team that's going to have a lot to say as we get down in the stretch in a very tough conference, and then as we get into postseason as well.
2-1 from Willingham. Blown into left. Hall coming on, dives, and he makes a terrific catch. Nope, he dropped it. Scored it out of his glove, gunned into second. It deflects off of Cable, and the run scores to make it 2-0. Colin Hall laid out for that. As we look at it again, just unable to snag it and prevent his second run from coming in.
It's a fantastic effort by Hall, and you see it. That's what's so hard about those diving catches in the outfield. You have to measure it so it gets in the web of your glove, and then you have to maintain control of the ball. You have to keep it in your glove when you hit the ground. Hall was not able to do that there, and they were fortunate that throw to second base, it was a strong throw by Colin Hall, that it hit Cable at second base. John Cable took one on the chest, but had it not, that ball would have scored it in the right field, and Cable would have been able to take at least 1 extra base.
Now 2-0, and here's Austin Bigger. Thinking through a breaking ball from Willingham. Bigger, the junior from Lilburn, Georgia, had a 2-run homer against LSU on Sunday. He is starting at catcher tonight because their normal starter at that position, the redshirt sophomore Mason Meadows, suffered a facial fracture on an errant swing early in that Sunday game. And a foul tick ricocheted right off the old kisser. Get a look at Cable. And that RBI double to score Shunk. Willingham stretches, and the pitch again chopped foul. Georgia 4th in the SEC in hitting, .290 average.
Really enjoyed watching their approach at the plate. Guys going opposite field consistently, a lot of foul tips. Had a couple strikeouts, but all in all, they have battled so far in this first inning.
Swing and a miss, flew it right by him. So Willingham strikes out the side, but allows 3 doubles, 2 of them to score runs. Georgia Tech comes to bat next, just underway in clean old-fashioned hate. 2-0 Georgia's, who moved to the bottom of the first. Yellow Jackets line up this order. Luke Waddell has been on a tear of late. He leads off, followed by the DH Goldberg. Kyle McCann still second in the nation with 12 home runs. Tristan English follows him in the cleanup spot. Barron Radcliffe, 4 for 10, a pair of home runs in the Louisville series. He moves up to 5th, followed by Hall, Serratos, and the Will Heights, Austin, and Nick. And they will face the right-handed slants of Tim Elliott, the junior. Those aren't your typical midweek numbers, Roddy.
Sorry, Andy, I got to pull out my magnifying glass to see that ERA. 0.39. The guy's only given up one earned run this year. That came against Alabama State. He's been incredible in every single start this season. 3-1, you are certainly right. Not your typical midweek numbers. At 22 strikeouts, only 6 walks. He is making a case. If those guys on the weekend weren't as good as they were, Tim Elliott may very well be on the weekend in the SEC for the University of Georgia.
Georgia defensively tied for 4th in the nation in fielding percentage. They line up Jernigan, Maxwell, and King across the outfield. Shunk and Rogers at the corners. Shepard and Talley, the double play combination up the middle. And bigger catches for Elliott, who earned his first career win versus Georgia Tech in 2017. Tossed an inning in the third of scoreless relief in the game at SunTrust Park.
How cool would that be? Getting your first
it's a memorable way to earn that first win.
It's SunTrust Park against the big rival. I mean, that's awesome.
Sophomore Luke Waddell leads off for the Jackets. Left-hander whose average continues to climb at .317 right now. And in his last 6 games, 13 for 25. And over that span, Roddy, he's raised his batting average by close to 90 points.
He's one of those guys in the lineup, along with Tristan English, that got off to a slow start at the beginning of the season, and then you always figured they were going to get it going. Certainly have as of late. There's a lot of hot bats in this Georgia Tech lineup.
Tech has a team batting .300 over those last 6 games. And here is Waddell, who tripled and drew 3 walks against the Louisville Cardinals Sunday. And Elliott starts him off with a strike on the outside corner. Elliott, a junior from Loganville, Georgia. His lone loss on the year was a 1-0 defeat to LIU Brooklyn, in which the run he allowed was unearned. And opponents only batting .138 against him. Check swing, it was down low. RBI doubles by Shunk and Cable represent the Georgia scoring in the top of the first as the counts move to 3-1 on Waddell. Danny Hall put his trust in Luke Waddell despite that slow start out of the gates. He has settled in and starting to swing like a leadoff batter as that one a bit above the knees. And a leadoff walk in the Jacket first.
Georgia Tech's going to need base runners, and you know, it's interesting. Luke Waddell moved from second base over to shortstop, and I don't know if there's a direct correlation between him starting to hit better and that move, but this is a guy who has not needed any moves to be hitting better over the course of this season with that .475 batting average.
And it plummeted to .475 because Goldberg only went 3 of 12 in the Louisville series.
3 of 12, and that's plummeting. I mean, that's incredible. There's a lot of guys that would love to go 3 for 12 in a down series, if you will, but he has been incredibly consistent for the Jackets this season.
Tops in the ACC, 3rd in the nation as he stares to strike one. Goldberg gets the bunt down. Rolls out to third. Shunk the throw offline. It'll rattle into right field. And Waddell takes third, with Goldberg advancing to second on the air. And they put some pressure early on this Georgia defense that has been razor sharp to begin. And Aaron Shunk, one of the least likely candidates to throw one away.
This Georgia defense was perfect over the weekend against LSU. And Shunk just trying to make the throw on the run. He was going to have to get Michael Goldberg too. And that's such a hard throw. It was just offline. Rogers at first base could not get there, and Georgia Tech coming out aggressive. I like the decision by Michael Goldberg. Let's put some pressure on the University of Georgia and see if you can get something going if you're Georgia Tech. I love it. I love the aggressive nature of it. And now you've got 2 runners on base for your best hitter in Kyle McCann.
2 in scoring position at that. McCann batting .369 and 12 home runs. Takes one down the middle for strike 1. It has scored a single and an E5. And despite the rain that had been intermittent last 2 hours or so, not heavy enough where they needed to roll out the tarp, but that grass still a little slick, and might have played some tricks with Aaron Shunk. Just off the plate, 1-1.
Yeah, there's a number of factors, Dad. It's a little chilly. It's not a cold night, but it's a little chilly, a little bit harder to get a good grip on the ball potentially, but this Georgia defense has been so good over the course of the season that it's certainly an anomaly for their season so far.
Bounced off the plate, a foul. In addition to being tied for second in the nation in home runs, Kyle McCann, the junior, second in the nation in walks. He's 6th in slugging. One of his 36 career home runs was against the Bulldogs in 2017.
Georgia's going to play him with an extreme shift. You've got Talley, Shepard, and Rogers all over on the right side of the infield, and the outfield is swung to right field as well.
Swing and a miss, blew it right by him. Big bounce back by Elliott to fan McCann.
And that's huge. Talk about a confidence boost after the air, coming back, striking out. One of the hottest hitters in the entire country. Just blew a fastball, as you said, Andy, right by him. McCann looked like he swung just under that, but either way, Georgia's got their first out.
Brings up Tristan English. Coming off 3 RBIs versus Louisville Sunday. Team's RBI leader a year ago.
Andy, we just saw this Georgia defense have an extreme shift for Kyle McCann to the right side of the field. Now they've done the exact opposite for Tristan English. They've swung Talley, Shepard, and Shunk all over there on the left side of second base, as you see here. Center field, Maxwell playing a little more straight up than he was a second ago, but expecting English to pull.
English has been bothered by a strained quad for most of this season. His average at .247. He's 2 for his last 20. Now he has shown an ability to reach by the hit by pitch. ACC leader in that category.
He's kept his on base percentage up over 350.
Missed it into the screen. And the count moves to 1-2.
Yeah, and English looked like he was coming out of a slump to start the year around the time when that quad strain happened. Kind of hit through it for a little bit, but she said 2 of your last 20. It's a tough way to come into a game against a tough pitcher in Tim Elliott.
And they had struck out McCann after Waddell and Goldberg had pulled into scoring position. And now 1-2 on the way to Tristan English. High drive, deep left, Jernigan backpedals. He's at the track. He'll have room right at the base of the wall. Plenty deep, though, to tag up Waddell and put Georgia Tech on the board to make it 2-1.
And if you're Georgia Tech, you're pleased with that. You gave it a ride, got it to the warning track, and you're able to score a run to cut this lead that Georgia has in half. Tristan English will be pleased with the ability to drive in a run.
2 outs and a man on second for arguably the top hitter for Georgia Tech in the Louisville series, the sophomore Barron Radcliffe, who bats 5th today. Radcliffe though he went 0 for 4 Sunday against the Cardinals. 4 for 6, 2 RBI, 2 home runs, 3 RBIs in the first 2 games of the series as he takes a cut and comes up empty.
With the injury to Chase Murray, it's given Barron Radcliffe a lot more opportunities, and he's really taken advantage of it after struggling some a year ago, particularly with the strikeouts. Has cut down on that. He's walked a lot more and has always had that great raw power.
Slams it softly off of first. Rogers waits. And that back foot just got on as Elliott was able to cover and retire Radcliffe. But Georgia had only allowed 1 first-inning run all season. Georgia Tech gets on the board with the English sac fly, 2-1. Our tail of the tape in clean old-fashioned hate with Georgia on top of Georgia Tech, 2-1. Their little margin separating those teams' batting averages, a 2.54 ERA by this Bulldog pitching staff. And second in the SEC, 5th in the nation.
The other impressive thing is only 67 walks allowed by Georgia Tech's pitching staff this year. That ERA is incredible. You have a staff-wide ERA of 2.54. Yeah, you're going to be pretty successful in any conference, much less the toughest conference in the country.
Willingham to face 7, 8, 9 in the Bulldogs' second. And it begins with the redshirt freshman from Ringgold, Georgia, Cheney Rogers. Three doubles, 3 strikeouts in that Bulldog first.
Both sides were fairly consistent, at least.
You know, for both pitchers, nerves are riding high as they toe the rubber for the first time. Perhaps more so for Willingham because Elliott at least had the experience of facing Georgia Tech before. Willingham, a junior who transferred from Snead State Community College. Can't stamp off the breaking ball, 2-2.
You see the rain coming down a little bit. It's been on and off, very lightly dusting the field here right now, but
hot shot and just under the glove of Wilhite. So Rogers able to connect on 2 strikes. Get a leadoff man aboard.
It's easy for me to say up here, but that's a hit that Austin Wilhite's going to want back. If he's able to get down on that ball, and Danny Hall's looking at his team having 1 out in this inning rather than a runner on first base and nobody out.
Danny Hall, whose Yellow Jackets are perfect in midweek games this season. His 26th year as the skipper of the Yellow Jackets. So man aboard for Randon Jernigan, the freshman. Jernigan's been struggling at the plate lately. Pops this bunt up out of play. We talked about the connection between Danny Hall and Georgia head coach Scott Strickland. Scott Strickland, a former all-conference catcher for Danny Hall. And Danny was the head coach of Kent State, and then Scott Strickland had 2 separate stints as an assistant under Danny Hall at Georgia Tech. Knows both sides of this rivalry well, as Jernigan can't square up on the bunt, 0-2. Jernigan with 1 sack bunt this year. Right in there on the breaker, strike 3. And a 4th strikeout for Willingham.
I've been impressed with Willingham's ability to bounce back from some of this adversity that he's faced early. This breaking ball here. That is right down Broad Street for Jernigan. Even though you retired the 8-hole hitter, you think, all right, I got a good shot to get the 9-hole guy out. Tucker Maxwell is not your average 9-hole hitter.
Not many 9-hole hitters are 5th in the SEC in slugging percentage. Junior out of Dawsonville, Georgia. Looks at ball 1. Maxwell, 333 on the year. He was a 192 hitter entering this season. And a streak of reaching base safely in 16 straight contests entering that LSU series. On top of his team high 6 home runs. Rogers no stolen base attempts this year. Maxwell was a Collegiate Baseball National Player of the Week earlier this month.
Scott Strickland sounded like he was expressing a little bit of displeasure with that strike call.
That's in for strike 2. Our home plate umpire tonight is Doug Vines. Greg Barron at first base, David Savage at second, Jeff Head at third. Willingham working on 4 strikeouts. And the dirt blocked by McCann. Now, even though Georgia has struck out 4 times, they've also made really good contact on 2 strikes as well.
They certainly have. I believe 2 of the doubles in the first inning came with 2 strikes. So exactly right, Andy. This is not a team that's afraid to hit for contact with 2 strikes.
The 2-2, high and outside. Willingham has only walked 3 batters all season, and now 28+ innings.
I don't know if it doesn't seem like it's affecting these guys. I hated playing when it was just a little bit of rain like this. So annoying.
Well, you were mostly standing in the outfield, were you not?
Yeah, maybe that's why it was so miserable. I was just standing there. I was like Nick
alone,
Wilhite,
standing in
just
the rain.
Alone, just me and my thoughts in the rain. You can see the field starting to get a little glossy.
When you're having to look up into the raindrops as well.
Yeah, that
fly
too.
balls.
Yeah. Honestly, I hated playing football in that weather too. I mean, just so annoying.
It's underneath this. Straight away center, and Wilhite into the raindrops. Makes the catch for out number 2.
Didn't bother Nick Wilhite. Maybe that's why he's an elite defender at the collegiate level. He doesn't care about the rain.
Now, playing through rain, it's not, I think, what you'd call a common occurrence in baseball, but is there such a thing as being a good rainy hitter, a rainy pitcher when there's rain falling? Is there something to that? Or does it happen so infrequently that really you can't extrapolate?
I think it happens so infrequently that it's tough, although I will say if you're a good rainy pitcher, I think it's just a guy that's able to consistently locate and throw a heavy fastball, because sometimes it's tough to get a grip on the bat when it's rainy. It's tough to get charged up a little faster. Honestly, it's just tough to get up to play baseball in the rain. It's kind of I don't want to say a miserable occurrence, but it's not the most fun. It's not the way baseball's supposed to be played. It's honestly not the way any sport's supposed to be played.
Cam Shepard proved himself a good rainy night hitter with a double in the first inning. Grounds one over to Serratos and over to English to retire the side. Leadoff single by Rogers, nothing more. Inning and a half complete from Atlanta, 2-1 Bulldogs. 2-1 Georgia as we head to the bottom of the second, and though he struck out in his first at bat, the junior Kyle McCann for Georgia Tech continues to cement himself as one of the best power-hitting catchers in college baseball.
One of the best power-hitting people, period. I mean, he has been so good this year with those 12 home runs. You just see the monster shots that he's been able to hit. Grand slam, that's a walk-off against UCLA. He has been clutch for this Georgia Tech team with the long ball, and if he continues at the pace that he's been at, he'll rewrite the Georgia Tech record books.
Replacing Joey Bart, who was the #2 overall pick of the San Francisco Giants last June, and the Johnny Bench Award winner for the nation's top collegiate catcher. That's not a bad Joey Bart imitation with those numbers.
No, it is certainly not. And you know, we've talked about this, but Kyle McCann was primarily the DH a year ago, and while he was a good hitter, he certainly didn't match the torrid pace that he started out this year. Sometimes it takes guys being able to get into the game on a pitch-in, pitch-out basis at catcher to just take their game to the next level, and Kyle McCann certainly has done that.
Sophomore Colin Hall, the coach's son, leads off the Tech second. The run Elliott allowed in the first was unearned. His ERA continues to trend down at .38. Quickly ahead on Hall, 0-2. Elliott was a reliever his first 2 years in Athens. Scott Strickland said his confidence really blossomed in the offseason. He's a guy that would be starting on the weekends for a lot of staffs.
And a lot of staffs in that conference, a conference that's peppered through the top 25. He will certainly come in huge for this Georgia team if they're able to make it to the postseason, which they almost certainly are. When you get to those regionals and into the conference tournaments, you need those extra arms, particularly if you drop a game, and he certainly will be a big part of their success going forward if they're able to get that far.
Hall fouls another one off. Sometimes those midweek starters can be your most valuable players in a regional setting.
Particularly if you get to a final game and your 3 weekend guys have already thrown. It's the midweek guy who's going to get that last start on Sunday to win you a regional. And you're exactly right. I mean, you've seen it time and time again, and particularly with your experiences being at the University of South Carolina previously. I mean, how many times did it come down to that Sunday guy winning you a game to get to a final game, and then it's the guy that trots out on the weekdays being able to win it for you?
Another 1-2 to Hall. Beautiful breaking ball right over the middle. Second strikeout for Elliott. And those midweek guys often come in for long relief if the starter is scuffling, and
that's a good point.
You're in an elimination scenario.
That's a good point. I guess we're seeing what a fantastic rainy day pitcher looks like. Able to snap off that breaking ball with 2 strikes.
Squinting through the raindrops as he fires to Oscar Serratos, the third baseman. It dips outside. Serratos batting .255. And it also underscores why these tough midweek contests have a lot of value to your pitching staff. Because you're going to face a team of a similar caliber in a regional, maybe a super regional. And if you're throwing a midweek starter who's on a weekly basis facing overmatched orders, mentally they may not be ready for the type of lineup they'll see in the postseason. So a matchup like this and what we'll see in Athens in a couple of weeks, and again when these teams play their finale in SunTrust Park, it can pay a lot of dividends for the depth of your staff.
It's a great point, and when you get into those regionals, the atmospheres are so charged, they're so energetic, that what Tim Elliott's going to see here and at Foley Field, and like you said, especially when you get to the SunTrust Park game, when you've got 20,000 there from each side, it's going to have that regional feel. It's going to have that SEC tournament feel. and especially in that conference. I mean, the atmospheres on a week-in, week-out basis are fantastic.
Bounced off the plate. It's a foul, according to Doug Vines. As this game unfolds, Georgia Tech would certainly like to work deep counts against Elliott, not only because of his numbers, but also Georgia had to tax its bullpen a lot to get that series win over LSU. So if they can get to their bullpen a little earlier than the Bulldogs would like, it might favor things for the Yellow Jackets. Rainy Tuesday night here in Atlanta. Another 1-2 to Serratos. He checks his swing. He went. And Serratos down on strikes.
We'll certainly get a replay of this. Our first base umpire, Craig Barron, making that call. Let's see if Mr. Serratos went around. It looks like he very well might have. He brought that bat back so quick that it was tough to tell. Craig Barron says yes, so Tim Elliott has his third strikeout of the day.
Back-to-back to begin the second. Here's the second baseman, Austin Wilhite. Coming off a 1-for-11 series versus Louisville.
Elliott throws that fastball. You saw Wilhite just swing through it. It's got some really late, sharp movement. It's almost like it's a hard two-seamer that he's throwing that darts back into the right-handed hitters at the last minute. It's just a fantastic pitch.
Elliott is known as a ground ball pitcher.
Throwing a pitch fastball with that late movement that's in the low to mid 90s is so hard to hit, because by the time you realize it's a strike and you measure it up, it's already moved.
Wilhite's worked the count full. Both teams played in their runs in the first inning. Elliott winds, and the payoff to Wilhite. Well outside. Austin Wilhite wins that battle. Second walk issued by Elliott. And Elliott is not done with Wilhite's this inning. As you get a look at Austin at first base. And now appearing in the batter's box, his twin brother, Tech center fielder Nick Wilhite.
And Nick has been a pleasant surprise for Georgia Tech down at the bottom of that lineup. His average at 264, significantly better than it was a year ago, and he's been almost at 300 with 2 outs.
Was hitless this weekend in Louisville, 0 for 12. Stings one toward the Georgia Tech on deck circle. Only batted 188 a year ago, so in spite of that hitless weekend in the Derby City, to still be sitting at 264 has to please Danny Hall in the 9-hole. At the knees, 0-2. Fastball snapped off at 94. Out of the zone, and Wilhite stays alive, 1-2. Elliott bidding to strike out the side and work around the 2-out walk to Wilhite. And the 1-2 just inside.
Austin Wilhite got in a situation where he was behind in the count, was able to work it back to 3-2 and then get a walk. Nick will certainly want to try and do that. Tim Elliott, If I'm him, I'm just trying to throw a fastball right down the middle to challenge Nick Wilhite.
Tallied up to 43 pitches. He's tossed 5+ innings in every start this season. Maybe not the economy he wants, through an inning in 2/3. He comes home on 2-2. That ball lifted down the left field line. Jernigan was positioned well, and he snares it for the final out. No runs, no hits, 1 left, 2 complete from Russ Chandler Stadium. Bulldogs on top 2-1. Well, a little rain won't stop the hatred from flowing at Russ Chandler Stadium as we welcome you back to Atlanta. Clean old-fashioned hate between Georgia Tech and Georgia. Bulldogs on top 2-1 as we move to the 3rd inning. You see the grounds crew hard at work.
Pretty good crowd here at Russ Chandler Stadium for a Tuesday, particularly one with a little bit of shoddy weather. See a couple students. See the Tech students in the front. Now that's smart. You got the umbrella. The ones in the back, you didn't even have a jacket on. That's hardcore there. You got the little fans out there.
What about the hood? Do you give credit for the hood?
See, it depends on the what the hood's made out of. If it's a cloth hood, it's gonna get soggy. You can't wear a cloth hood to the rain. You gotta wear one of those like North Face, the nice ones. Now, I'm not sure you get the branded logo with that.
Slicing into right off the bat of King. Radcliffe is there, 1 out. We come for the baseball insights, and we also come for your wisdom, Robbie.
Well, if you want to break down a tire on a rainy day, I'm not the best, because I am often ill-prepared for a rainy day, like I am today. I mean, I'm wearing a sweater right now, and I got no umbrella, I got no hood, I got nothing.
Yeah, well, we also got a roof over our heads.
That's true. Yeah, good point.
Here is Shunk, doubled and scored a run in the 1st. Takes a strike on the inner half from Willingham. Willingham, as we told you, Georgia native and played 2 seasons of JUCO ball at Snead State Community College. Played very little, though, his sophomore season. Had a scare with ulcerative colitis, which caused him to miss most of the year. Dropped 20 pounds, and committed to Georgia Tech before the start of that sophomore season. And once he regained his strength, the commitment on Georgia Tech's side never wavered. A ball and 2 strikes to Shunk. Gets it softly right back to Willingham. And he shovels to English for a quick 2nd out. Had him lurching out in front of that breaking ball.
It's a 2-strike swing right there. He's just trying to foul it off, and he's able to get it off the end of the bat. Not far enough away from Willingham. He's able to make easy work of it.
2 away for Talley. Struck out swinging his first at-bat. Ground ball off of first. English skids to a stop nicely. And this time on to Willingham. 1-3 on the 2nd out, 3-1 on the 3rd out, and it's a tidy 1-2-3 for Amos Willingham and the Jackets as we head to the bottom of the 3rd. With the top of its order due up in the 3rd, 2-1 Georgia. Both teams racking up really impressive series wins over the weekend. We told you about Georgia taking 2 of 3 from number 10 LSU, the favorites of the SEC West. The series was held in Athens, but Georgia Tech nearly dealt Louisville its first sweep since the Cardinals joined the ACC. They were 1 strike away from accomplishing that on Sunday. They fell in the finale 5-4, but as aggravating as that loss might have been, you have to look big picture if you're Danny Hall and really be impressed with the competitive you saw out of your team this past weekend.
Not only that, but you've just stacked up 2 wins against a top 5 baseball team. When it comes to RPI season and you start to look at the resumes of these teams to get into the NCAA regionals, that one certainly will be brought up, and that'll be one that Georgia Tech, that's a feather they can stick in their cap.
Waddell leads off the Tech 3rd. led off the first with the walk and scored on the English sac fly. Danny Hall had said this might have been the most grueling schedule he's constructed in his 26 years on the flats. Strength of schedule is the toughest in the ACC.
Yeah, put UCLA on the schedule. You always play Georgia and Auburn, who are both top 25 teams this year. It's certainly no walk in the park. And then obviously with what the ACC brings, it is certainly very difficult. But Georgia Tech has managed it fairly admirably to this point, especially taking 2 out of 3 on the road in Louisville.
A little low, count's gone full. Only hit Tim Elliott is allowed was a bunt single by Michael Goldberg in the first. He's walked 2, he struck out 3, and the payoff to Waddell just fouled back.
You mentioned the pitch count last inning and 50 pitches so far. Georgia Tech certainly making Tim Elliott work.
Ground ball out towards second. Talley ranges over. And on to first to retire Waddell.
Now batting number 6, Michael Goldberg.
Georgia Tech only has 1 hit on the board. You were given 3 guesses as to who is responsible for that hit. You wouldn't last long before you landed on this guy, Goldberg.
He'd probably be my first guess.
481. And that's over 81 at-bats. Pops this high down the line. King over, and he runs out of room. And with Goldberg, it is nothing fancy. 39 hits now. Exactly 1 has gone for extra bases.
And the thing is, it's not like these singles have been weakly hit balls through the hole. Like, these are laced to the outfield by and large. And he has been incredibly consistent. 3 for 12, as we mentioned earlier, is a good series for a lot of people, or at least not a bad series. Michael Goldberg, he is certainly not pleased with that, on the look to get back on track. But
and until last weekend had been among the nation's leaders and hardest to strike out. Did get rung up 4 times in the Louisville series. 1 out, bases empty as Elliott fires the 0-2. Checked his swing, and he went around, said Doug Vines. Couldn't lay off the ball in the dirt, and Goldberg down for the second out.
we laid off it on the pitch prior to this. Just offered at it on this one, and one of the toughest guys, as you said, to strike out goes down for the first time in this game. That's Tim Elliott's 4th, as Kyle McCann comes to the plate.
McCann struck out swinging his first time. Third in the nation in walks per game. The leader in that category is a guy who's generating some potential 1-1 conversation in June. Adley Rushman, catcher for Oregon State.
He has been a good player for a long time out there in Corvallis. Seems like a long time. I guess he's a junior. As you get a look at the defense there that Georgia is employing. If I'm Kyle McCann, I'm laying down a bunt down the third baseline.
12 home runs, second in the nation. And you be signing for the bunts.
I don't know if I'm signing for it if I'm a coach, but just to be a little cheeky if you're Kyle McCann, just knock it down there. let it roll down to the third base bag, and then trot over to first base. Do the home run trot down to first base.
Yeah, I think Kyle is thinking, if I'm going to beat this shift, I'm not going to bunt. I'm going to hit it up and over the shift.
Yeah, I guess so.
3 balls and a strike.
This is not a Kyle McCann thing. This is a baseball thing. I do wish when people did it, like when they used to do this to David Ortiz, just wish once he would bunt, just to make someone pay for it, make him look silly.
Checked his swing. The ball was down, and McCann takes his base. Right on cue at 31st. Free pass issued this season to McCann to keep the Georgia Tech third alive.
I think it was very intentional by Tim Elliott. You'd be careful with Kyle McCann to get to a guy in Tristan English who struggled a little bit more. And he's certainly a dangerous hitter, but this year has not quite found the consistency that he's accustomed to.
English drove in Georgia Tech's run with a sac fly back in the first.
It's a heck of a play in the dugout. I think that was one of the Will Heights, I believe, that snagged that foul ball with one hand. I'm going to go with Nick. He looked pretty content with himself there.
Okay. Even though Austin's the second baseman.
That's true. That's a good point.
0-2 on English.
There we go. Oh, and it was Nick's. See, he had the look on his face that, yeah, I nailed it. See the stare afterwards, too?
It's not just how pretty the grab is when you make a snag in the dugout, it's how nonchalant you can look while doing it.
Exactly.
Swing and a miss. Ran one right by English. Side retired as Georgia Tech strands one. 3 complete from Atlanta. Still 2-1 Bulldogs.
At the bottom of the third inning, Georgia Tech has had no runs, had no hits.
2-1 Georgia as we move to the fourth. ESPN and the ACC bring you ACC Network coming August 2019. 15 universities all on one network. Visit getaccn.com to learn more. I think I saw yesterday on social media now 149 days away from the launch of ACC Network.
Yeah, it's getting close. It's exciting for the conference. Georgia and Georgia fans are obviously familiar with what the SEC network has done for that conference, and the ACC, the last of the major conferences to really have their own network, if you count Longhorn for the Big 12. I mean, certainly they wouldn't, but we do.
I don't think you get a consensus from the other 9 teams in the Big 12.
Some teams, rumor is some teams left over the fact that it was just the Longhorn network.
And they are now appearing on SEC Network.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's John Cable to lead off a hack and a miss off of Willingham. Cable with a bloop double and an RBI in this first inning. He's originally from Roswell, Georgia. Began his career at the University of New Orleans, where he was a preseason first-team All-Southland projection. Missed all of last season with a hamstring injury. An extra year of eligibility. Graduated from New Orleans and now working toward his graduate degree in kinesiology at UGA. Off the hands and flown out to left. Hall, no trouble this time, 1 out.
Catcher number 8, Austin Bigard.
Looks like both of these pitchers have really settled into this game after Amos Willingham gave up those 3 doubles in the first. He's only given up 1 single since. Has not allowed a run, and obviously Tim Elliott on the other side has kept Georgia Tech off the scoreboard since that first inning as well.
That's 7 straight set down by Willingham. Austin Bigger struck out swinging his first time. Now, we haven't even gotten around to Amos Willingham's cousin, which is a name certainly familiar to Georgia fans. Willingham is cousins with Lee Mitchell, former Bulldog player who was a 6th-round pick in 2003 by the Florida Marlins. He was a 3-year starter for them, led them in home runs in that 2003 season. Was a terrific defensive third baseman in his time at Athens. The web grows ever more tangled in the Georgia Tech-Georgia rivalry, does it not?
It does. Yeah, I don't even know if it resembles a web at this point. There's so many connections. And
checked his swing. McCann appeals, and he did not go. Said Craig Barron. Count's gone full.
Craig Barron's already rung up a couple. Let's go look at this. There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt that Austin Bigger did not go around. Good call.
And his discipline enables him to reach via the walk. Not an easy thing to do against Willingham. That's just the 4th free pass he's allowed this season in 30 in the 3rd innings.
But you said it. It's the discipline. It's the fact that you're able to lay off that really close 2-strike pitch. Willingham's got to come back and make another one. Sails it high, and Cheney Rogers is up with a runner on base.
Rogers singled to lead off the 2nd. Quick turnaround for Georgia following tonight. Head back to Athens and tomorrow board a bus for Lexington, Kentucky for a series against UGA that starts Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And gleaming new ballpark in Lexington. And finally put Cliff Hagan Stadium out to pasture. And you know, the best time to catch Kentucky when you have to face them on the road is the weekend their basketball team is still alive in the NCAA tournament. Exactly. And I can speak on that from firsthand experience.
Oh, really?
The home field advantage will not be quite as fearsome, I would think, for these Bulldogs this weekend.
I mean, that's their thing, you know. That's the obviously the Kentucky basketball team is one of the prides of that school, if not the pride of that school, and especially if P.J. Williams plays this weekend, they will be very excited about their chances. That's a good point by you, Andy.
I appreciate you acknowledging me. It's only been 3 years. A ball into 2 strikes to Rogers. The pitch from Willingham is fought off.
Talking about the NCAA tournament, these two conferences, the ACC and the SEC, I think the SEC maybe as much as any conference in the tournament has really, I don't know if surprised is the right word, but I think there was a little bit of doubt about a couple of teams. Auburn, Tennessee, LSU. They have been very good.
Another 1-2 on the way. Cut on and missed. A big uppercut from Rogers on that back foot breaking ball from Willingham. 5th punch out for the junior. 2 away into Georgia 4th.
Excellent pitch on the inside corner. Starts just over the middle of the plate, breaks inside, and Rogers not able to put a bat on it.
2 out for Jernigan. Freshman hailing from Brunswick, Georgia. A lot thrust on that young man's shoulders out in left field, replacing Tucker Bradley. Was ruled out for the season after injuring his right shoulder. It's his non-throwing shoulder. Diving for a catch versus Dayton on March the 12th.
And Bradley hitting over 300 for his career. It's a tough spot to replace, and especially for a freshman, a guy that's taking his first season, not only in college baseball, but in the SEC, which is one of the more difficult roads to hoe.
Tries to sneak a bunt down. Strike instead. Well, Bradley was penciled in to replace Keegan McGovern in left field, and McGovern was a mainstay in that Georgia lineup, a 9th-round pick of the San Diego Padres. So now it's up to Jernigan. Behind 0-2 with Bigger at first. Ring him up. In the dirt. Shagged by McCann. Zips it on to English. And the side retired. 2 more strikeouts for Willingham through 3.5 at Russ Chandler Stadium. Bulldogs still on top 2-1. And to Metro, Roddy Jones as we welcome you back to Atlanta. It's a 2-1 Georgia lead. Well, tight games, nothing new for Georgia Tech, particularly in ACC play. But they have been on the wrong end of those tight comeback games. A little too much for their liking. You take those 3 games into account, they're 5-4 in the ACC. They could easily be 8-1.
Absolutely. And if you're Georgia Tech, I guess you can take the positive from it and say, hey, we're in those games against some big-name teams. I mean, Miami, Virginia, Louisville. While Virginia may not be what it was a few years ago when it was a national championship contender, that's still a good baseball program. Miami as well. But being 8-1 in the ACC to this point, I mean, you're sitting pretty there at the top. A good chance to get a really good seed for the tournament.
Aaron Radcliffe stares at the ball outside. And that 5-4 loss to Louisville in the finale on Sunday. Georgia Tech and Jonathan Hughes on the mound. 2 outs, bases empty. And walked the bases loaded and gave up the game-winning hit on a ball that didn't really clear the infield. Tough way to finish what was otherwise a very well-played series by the Yellow Jackets as that ball dips into zone 1-2.
Yeah, it leaves you with a sour taste in your mouth, but you come back against your rival who's ranked in the top 10, and you're able to get a win here, then it propels you going into the weekend where you have Notre Dame coming to town.
And the dirt 2-2 to Radcliffe. Bombed a couple of home runs against the Cardinals. Elliott has allowed 1 hit. He has walked 3. A sophomore from Peachtree Corners, Georgia, Brian Radcliffe. And he goes down on strikes. Spun one at his feet. And you know, so often it's about the placement of that loss. Because if Georgia Tech had lost that game in the middle game of the series as opposed to the finale, all of a sudden then you're not on that bus ride 6-7 hours long stewing about it. Instead, had they just swapped that second and third game, they'd be riding high coming back to Atlanta.
Exactly. And all of yesterday, which is typically the off day for these teams, you're sitting there thinking, man, we should have swept Louisville, where you're right. If you do it like Georgia did, they dropped the Friday game, and then you win Saturday, Sunday, and you feel great coming out of the weekend. You took 2 or 3 from LSU. Yeah, certainly you should have won on Friday, but you righted the ship. So you're exactly right.
Colin Hall, the batter, and he gets ahead 2-0. All the offense in this game took place in the first inning.
It's been a real pitcher's duel since then, and with Tim Elliott to 71 pitches, you got to think in the next few innings Scott Strickland's going to make a move. Nobody in that Georgia bullpen yet, because he is absolutely cruising.
Hall checks his swing, takes a strike, 2-1. Make it 2-2 now. Fouled off the prior pitch from Elliott. Hall chases a high, hard one. It's 3 consecutive Ks by Elliott dating back to the 3rd. Starting to catch up to Willingham. That's his 7th.
The guy that coming into this game had the huge strikeout to walk ratio. Struck out 22 and only walked 6 coming in, and just trying to work that ratio back in the order after allowing 3 walks today. 7 strikeouts, as you said, has been very impressive.
Serratos, one of those strikeout victims in the second. These teams will meet again April 9th in Athens and wrap things up with the big one at SunTrust Park, April the 23rd. Fly ball off the end of Serratos' bat. It drifts over to King, who has it measured, and he completes the 1-2-3. Georgia Tech fourth. Still 2-1 Bulldogs in clean old-fashioned hate. Looks like the rain has moved on here. Good to see as we move to the fifth inning. Once we get to the late innings, that's when you see two of the better two-way players, not just in the Southeast, but perhaps in the country, in Tristan English and Aaron Shunk.
Yeah, and Aaron Shunk has those 9 saves on 9 save attempts. Tristan English has been fantastic for Georgia Tech the past couple seasons as the closer. They're coming off of Tommy John surgery. It is it's so impressive. That's one of the things you have to love about college baseball that you don't see at the next level. I guess until Shohei Ohtani shows up, you don't see guys going both ways. And there's so many that are capable of doing it. See the ground screw. You got to have a new, what are those things called? I'm going to call it a cleat scraper.
I like it.
All right. But back to the two-way player. I mean, you love to see it in college baseball because so many guys are capable of doing it.
You know, the irony is the award for the best two-way player in college baseball is named after John Olerud.
Yeah.
Now, he wasn't a two-way player with the Blue Jays, if memory serves.
No, you're exactly right.
Yeah. You know, Tristan English has been hobbled, as we told you, by a strained quad, which has limited his ability to get on the mound. He did earn the save in Georgia Tech's Saturday win versus Louisville. Also closed out, got the save in the Sunday finale the weekend prior versus Virginia, but still trying to work his way back and be a reliable back-of-game pitcher for Danny Hall. Tucker Maxwell leads off from the 9-hole where his 6 home runs lead the Bulldogs. Had a home run here at Russ Chandler last year. A double as well and a pair of RBIs, and he's even on Willingham 1-1. Now, unlike college programs where you can only have between 25 and 27 on a travel roster, when you get to a major league organization, you got a whole farm system,
exactly,
which eliminates the need for those two-way players.
But you see, I think a lot more of these guys could do it at that level if they weren't told they couldn't.
Swing and a miss, and Maxwell strikes out.
And we're starting to see more and more of these guys creeping up into the minor leagues, being two-way players. The difficult thing is that you have to be major league caliber at 2 different positions, and it's hard enough to be major league caliber at one, as you see Amos Willingham blowing that fastball by Tucker Maxwell.
Top of the order now, and Shepard. He's 1 for 2. Chops it high, but foul. A couple of years ago, remember Louisville had Brendan McKay, who was a fantastic two-way player here in the ACC, number 4 overall pick. And the big debate was whether teams would project him more as a hitter or a pitcher. And a check swing on the appeal. Shepard did go around. Count moves to 1-2.
It was my understanding that McKay was drafted and they were thinking of letting him play both at the next level, correct? Or when he was drafted?
That I don't recall.
He was.
But it does give you a little bit of a fallback if you're a major league team that if a guy doesn't pan out on the mound, put a bat in his hand.
He was one of the best pure hitters in the country that year. He was a guy that you see a fly ball out to the outfield.
Will Height back pedals and snares at 2 outs.
He was a guy that on the mound would start the Friday game, allow 5 hits, 1 run, and then in the 7th inning he'd hit a 2-run homer and win the game 2-1 in a complete game, 1-run game. I mean, he was so good. Such a smooth hitter, efficient pitcher. The ACC's been littered with him. Sorry.
Riley King stands in. A big cut and a miss. But I think that's what also makes college baseball still so special, is those guys have not evaporated. They've not vanished. Obviously, the roster limitations being what they are, you need those two-way guys.
You do, absolutely.
The scholarship limits. And so the fact that two-way players still have a foothold in college baseball, one of the unique and I think endearing elements of this game. As the count runs to 1-2 on King, who struck out in the first, popped up in the third.
Hope it creeps more into college football as well. I'd love to see two-way guys in football too.
King just gets a piece.
Though. Yeah, they don't get them very much though.
Willingham fires and causes King to low bridge. Seven strikeouts, 1 walk so far by Willingham. And give him 8. Breaking ball that took a hard right turn away from Riley King. 2 more Ks in the inning for Willingham. A halfway home from Russ Chandler Stadium. A pitcher's duel so far with the Bulldogs on top 2-1. Veteran Roddy Jones back with you from Atlanta. SEC is always well represented in the top 25. Mississippi State up to number 2. Vanderbilt number 5. Georgia, Arkansas in the top 10 as well. Texas A&M, Auburn just outside. And LSU dropping several spots after that series loss to the Bulldogs this weekend.
Fortunately for the Bulldogs, you look at Mississippi State, Arkansas, Texas A&M, Auburn, LSU, Ole Miss, all on the western side of the conference, as well as Alabama. So they miss most of those teams. They don't have to play Arkansas. They miss Texas A&M and Ole Miss to get Alabama at the end. But
how strange is it, by the way, to see Florida at 1-5 in the SEC?
Oh, I know, it's incredible. That is incredible. But that conference always littered, like schools littered in the top 25, and you want to see college baseball at its highest level, you go to the SEC. The atmospheres that you get on a week-in, week-out basis, particularly in places like Oxford and LSU, South Carolina, Georgia, sellout crowds. I mean, it's playoff atmosphere. I've heard rumor that it just means more in the SEC.
Yeah, but in the ACC we do this.
Yeah, exactly. So
Austin Wilhite leads off the Georgia Tech 5th with the ball. A lot of great pitching, a lot of great hitting in the ACC, as Georgia Tech knows week in and week out. They play host to Notre Dame beginning on Friday for a 3-game series.
It's a conference that's not too shabby either. A number of teams in the top 25 and nationally regarded players.
Wilhite walked and was stranded in the second. Down the line, slicing and twisting off foul. And again, Georgia Tech just 1 hit off Elliott through the first 4 innings. And that was on a bunt single, so they've yet to clear the infield. They are facing a Georgia team that leads the nation entering this week in hits allowed per 9 innings. And with the ZRA of .33 currently, Tim Elliott has certainly contributed to that, as he deals another 1-2 to Wilhite, up and away. Oh, and a nice barehand pick there by Doug Vines.
Doug Vines. That's the only time he's going to get an applause all night from both sets of fans.
And it ricocheted off the brick, crawled up the netting, right back down to Doug Vines. Flashing the flesh when leather will not suffice, as the 2-2 is fouled back by Wilhite. Doug Vines will let that roll back away from him. How often do we see a replay dedicated to the home plate umpire? But Doug
Almost
Vines
never.
deserved it.
That's a good job. He didn't have to flip the mask. He was able to measure it up. Got the hand firmly underneath it. That's just good technique right there by Doug Vines.
I like the moxie as well to go after that.
Yeah, he had no doubt about it. As soon as he looked back and saw that ball coming at him, he did not shy away from the moment. I got to say, that's the top umpire play I've seen all year.
Not a long list.
It's probably the only umpire play I've seen all year.
Yeah, another 2-2. Grounded to third, and it squeezes past Young. Austin Wilhite, his second time reaching base, and Georgia Tech has its first hit since the first.
Ball is laced. Right as you talked about the ball not leaving the infield for Georgia Tech, Austin Wilhite able to get one through, and I'd expect Georgia Tech to play a little small ball here. Nick Wilhite, if he's asked to bunt, likely try and bunt for a hit on the first one and then secure it and securely get it down on the second one. But down one run, you'd expect to see a little small ball.
Especially with Waddell, Georgia Tech's hottest hitter in the on-deck circle. Wilhite has a pair of sacrifice bunts this year. Showing, getting out of the way of it. And it was on a Michael Goldberg bunt in the first. And Aaron Chung threw it away, which allowed runners to advance in scoring position. Ultimately, that lead runner, Waddell, was driven in by the English sac fly. And that one just clips the bat of Wilhite. A ball into strike.
I don't know if Nick Wilhite was caught off guard by that pitch or what. That was a strange bunt attempt. Maybe he thought that he couldn't get out of the way of it. It was so far inside. So that was a little weird for a bunt attempt.
One and two. And it's almost like he spun forward, not backwards.
Like he was trying to get out of the way of it that way. And on that second bunt attempt, the one that we just saw, that ball was right down the middle. You'd like to see him go ahead and give himself up, get square, and be able to bunt that ball instead of showing late as he did.
Elliott deals. And can't stick it on the outside corner, 2-2.
Because Elliott's delivery to the plate is so quick, mix that with a fastball in the low 90s, that ball gets on you really, really quick, and I think that's part of the reason the timing was thrown off for Nick Wilhite.
Dips a bit down and in, count's gone full. A full count on Wilhite with his twin brother Austin at first base following the leadoff single. And the top of the order in Waddell up next. Runner is off on the pitch and it's driven foul.
Like Georgia Tech being aggressive there. Nick Wilhite able to foul that ball off, but his brother Austin running at first base gets the infield moving a little bit, creates some more holes potentially for his brother Nick.
Georgia again is without its normal starting catcher Mason Meadows after that facial fracture Sunday. And a foul tip that glanced him off the face. Bigger flashes the sign, and again the 3-2. Again it's spoiled. Austin Wilhite was again in motion. Another payoff pitch hit weakly right in front of the mound. He'll be enough to advance Wilhite. A late throw, but it's in time to get Nick Wilhite at first. Wilhite able to put one in play, advance a runner into scoring position.
I'm not sure Willingham knew how fast Wilhite was going to get down the line. A little bit of a bobble there too, but certainly out. I'm sorry, that was Tim Elliott on the mound. I'm not sure he knew exactly how fast that Nick Wilhite was. I mean, that's a tough one because you got to wait for it to bounce to you a little bit as well. You're not going to charge that and barehand it. But a good job of getting the out as you get a meeting on the mound.
Pitch count nearing 100. And a left-hander warming up behind Elliott as we take a look at that swing again from Nick Wilhite. And the throw to first. It looks like Rogers on the stretch was able to get it in time. But if you're Danny Hall, you have to like that productive swing on 2 strikes from Nick Wilhite.
Yeah, you were going to bunt him anyway, so the fact that he's able to get the ball in play and able to advance the runner is something that you like.
Now, if Georgia makes a pitching change, that'll snap a streak of Elliott working 5+ innings in every start this season. And it looks like the call has been made to Adam Goodman. We'll give you his numbers as Tim Elliott's 9 is done. Game-tying run in scoring position for the Jackets here in the 5th. Now, there's never any doubt at Russ Chandler Stadium when the visiting team makes a pitching change because this is the tradition inside that Tech dugout.
They play the techno version of Hit the Road Jack, and those guys, the fist pumps out of that bullpen, out of that dugout.
Well, a Georgia native and Ray Charles as Georgia turns things over to its bullpen and the left-hander Adam Goodman.
And you get Goodman coming in. The lefty who's going to face the top of this Georgia Tech lineup with Waddell hitting left-handed, McCann hitting left-handed if you get that far. And you see another minuscule ERA, 1.45 on the season. It's a guy that's going to fastball, curveball, change up you.
Good left-on-left matchup.
Absolutely. Apologize, that graphic was a little bit off there. The actual ERA on the year for Goodman's 4.05 on the season. But a 1.45 whip, so we had it right, just a little mislabeled there. It happens a little bit. It's clean old-fashioned hate. So somebody snuck in there and changed it for one of those teams.
Let the conspiracies begin. Waddell walked and scored in the first. He grounded out to second back in the third. Waddell, who was 13 for his last 26. 4 RBIs in that span, and the sophomore in a run-scoring situation here. Almost gets away. Bigger's able to smother it.
Goodman a little errant on that, obviously, on that first pitch. A little amped up to get out on the mound and take on this Georgia Tech lineup. It's a guy that's only allowed 3 walks on the season, so not a pitcher that typically struggles with his command. See if he settles down.
Bounce off the plate, a foul.
It's a chilly enough night where that one's going to sting for a little longer than it typically does. Obviously, you never want to get hit on the foot, but it seems like it hurts less when it's sunny and 75.
All a state of mind. 2-1.
Now, there are diminishing returns on that as it creeps up. If it's like 99 and you hit, it just feels like it's throbbing the rest of the day. So I think around 87 is when you start to see the pain creep back up.
Not 86.
No, you're still going down in pain tolerance.
That one does trickle away from Bigger. So Goodman uncorks a wild pitch. It moves Will Hite to third with one away.
And that's big because now anything in play essentially will have a chance to score a run. We saw Bigger behind the plate be able to block that first one or at least get in front of it. Not quite able to do it there, and Luke Waddell is in a good position to be able to drive in the tying run as the infield's in.
3-1 is hit high, hard, and deep to right field. King looks up, and it's gone. The infield drawn in. Luke Waddell decides to go yard instead. And the Jackets have the 3-2 lead.
And that was a tough pitch to hit out, as you see the shortstop fired up. That was a tough pitch up near the eyes. Let's see how high this was. Oh no, right in the letters. He turns on it and absolutely drills that. He knew it right away. See the "let's go baby" coming around first base. There's no better time to hit a home run than against your big rival in state. Bragging rights on the line, and you deposit it onto Fowler Street over the right field fence.
Second home run of the year for Waddell. Georgia Tech on top 3-2 as Michael Goldberg takes ball one. And the ball has been absolutely exploding off Luke Waddell's bat the last couple of weeks.
The season that he had a year ago, it was really only a matter of time before he got going, and Georgia Tech holds on to this lead. That smile's not going to come off his face for a while.
Georgia Tech trying to stop a 6-game losing streak to the Bulldogs as Goldberg looks at another one low.
And this is the most into this game that this Georgia Tech crowd has been, so it's a big test for Adam Goodman on the mound. You gave up a home run. The crowd's into it. They're fired up. You've got the number 2 hitter, one of the toughest guys in the entire country to get out at the plate. You're behind 3-0 with Kyle McCann on deck. It's a big test for Adam Goodman, excuse me.
And the dangerous Kyle McCann on deck. Goodman will try to get one over, and one he sorely needs against Goldberg. Low and in, ball 4.
And Andy, a point that you made earlier in the game comes up right here. This is a Georgia team that really had to go deep into that bullpen on Sunday against LSU. So Scott Strickland may not be quite as quick to pull the hook because he doesn't have as many guys available.
McCann has walked and struck out. As we told you, 12 home runs, tied for second in the nation. You do have the left-on-left matchup, but right now, that strike zone has been a suggestion for Goodman. Bulldogs do shift their infield. And looks like Scott Strickland and the brain trust inside the Georgia dugout will at least have a word with Goodman. Right-hander Jack Gowan, number 19, I believe, is warming up down the line in the Georgia bullpen. And it is indeed Gowan as you see him dropping low.
Not sure how the sidearm angle plays into that matchup, as it looks like Gowan's ready to come in. Scott Strickland has not made the decision yet.
And the call is mid-made. The 2-run homer by Luke Waddell puts Georgia Tech on top, still one away in the 5th. Yellow Jackets bidding for more. Jeddick the second time. after Georgia Tech chases Goodman from the game following the Waddell home run and the Goldberg walk. 3-2 Georgia Tech here in the bottom of the fifth. And a different arm angle, to say the least, in the right-hander, Jack Gowan.
Gowan with a 6.75 ERA on the season. 2 2/3 innings pitched this year, as you see the senior from Fayetteville. He's given up 2 earned runs on the season, 3 walks, 6 strikeouts. And when you're facing Kyle McCann and you got a guy that struggled a little bit, that lefty-lefty matchup goes out of the window. You bring in a righty that's going to give you a little bit of a different look. But nonetheless, all the momentum seems to be on Georgia Tech's side.
And even though you sacrifice Roddy that left-on-left matchup, as you notice in the warm-up tosses of Gowan, he has 2 separate arm angles. He can go traditional sidearm, he can go more 3/4. And so the multiplicity of arm slots can be just as deceptive to a left-hander, even though you're staring at a right-handed thrower.
Absolutely. And the way that the ball travels, not only do you not know exactly where the ball is going to come from, but when you get that really sidearm angle, the ball is going to tail all over the place. So it's going to be imperative, Kyle McCann, if that ball's on the outside part of the plate, to stay going the other way, because it's going to tail away from him.
Shift remains on in the Georgia infield. Paints the outside corner, 0-1. Again, gets away from Bigger. Rode in on the catcher, and that enables Goldberg to take second.
That could be part of Bigger stepping in for Mason Meadows. Just that situation, getting crossed up a little bit, thinking that it was a breaking ball that was called or that the ball was going to break. And Kyle McCann will be intentionally walked now to set up a double play.
McCann is second in the nation in walks. That's now his 32nd. They don't subcategorize intentional walks in the official NCAA statistics, but you'd be hard-pressed to find somebody who's been intentionally walked more this 2019 season than that man.
Once again, they work themselves away from around Kyle McCann. Tristan English at the plate in a big situation. Georgia, ground ball away from getting out of this inning.
He is locked in. Struck out swinging back in the third. And another one that gets away from Bigger. That sweeper jumped off his glove, and now second and third for the Jackets. 3 passes starting to haunt the Bulldogs here in the fifth.
A tough inning for Austin Bigger behind the plate. That one just slid away from him at the last minute. That's a tough one for a catcher to go out and get. The reason you walk Kyle McCann is to set up that double play to get away from that big bat, and now with the passed ball, you're able to work 2 runners in a scoring position for Tristan English, and the infield once again is in.
Cut on and missed. English on the year, 244 with runners in scoring position. It jumps to 292. He's got Goldberg at third, McCann at second. Fly ball. Medium left toward the line. Jerningen is there. Goldberg tags. And the throw comes in short. Georgia Tech gets a second sac fly RBI from Tristan English. And they stretch the lead to 4-2.
And if you're not finding grass and hitting it particularly well from an average standpoint, you still want to be able to contribute to your team. And Tristan English has done just that today. 2 sac flies. So even though in the scorebook is 0 for 1, those 2 RBIs are huge for Georgia Tech So he was able to get it just deep enough for Michael Goldberg to score without a throw.
Cam stays put at second. Here's Barron Radcliffe. A 3 spot for the Jackets in the third. No surprise, Tristan English would supply a pair of sac flies. Was tied for the team lead in that category coming in. Gave the redshirt junior 5 total this year as that ball is crushed by Radcliffe, but well fouled.
I think that ball landed in the football stadium.
It disappeared into the Atlanta Knights.
Oh my goodness.
There's some folks at the stoplight just beyond the right field foul pole who got a scare from Barron Radcliffe. Stays alive on 0-2.
And one of the hardest things to do is when you're way ahead of a pitch like that and you hit an absolute bomb foul, is to refocus and do what Barron Radcliffe did right then. A good inside-out swing, fouling that ball off to the left side.
Reaches out, sprays it foul again. Danny Hall has praised Radcliffe's approach, much more disciplined, not chasing pitches out of his zone nearly as much as his freshman season when he would primarily DH for Danny Hall. Chase Murray has missed the last 7 games. Just giving Barron Radcliffe some extended playing time, and he has certainly delivered. Trying to deliver another run for the Yellow Jackets. On a pass ball high and away, it's 1-2. Away from Gowan, 2-2.
That ball got away from Bigger a little bit as well. Kyle McCann, second base, not opting to test it, but I think the difference in arm slots has affected the catcher as well.
Fly ball ripped into left center. Maxwell giving chase, and that ball is gone. Another 2-run homer by the Jackets here in the 5th, and it's Barron Radcliffe who will touch them all to make it 6-2 Tech. He continues to bomb away for the Jackets.
And as impressive as that foul ball was, that home run was even more impressive. That was a line drive, basically. Hit to the opposite field, maybe the deepest part of the ballpark there in left center. And you see the raw power there by Barron Radcliffe when he's got that approach and he is being disciplined at the plate. That's just a swing where he's trying to put the ball and play hard somewhere, and you see him fired up around the base pass. An excellent piece of hitting to put Georgia Tech up by 4.
A 2-run homer from Waddell, and now a 2-run blast by Radcliffe, and it brings up Colin Hall, who's 0 for 2 with a pair of strikeouts. And when you're facing a pitcher who comes from the side and you're left-handed bat, the ability to hit middle away, you can still put a charge into it. Barron Radcliffe did just there. A young man in Barron Radcliffe, Roddy, who had 4 total home runs entering this past weekend. He now has 3 in his last 4 games.
Well, the big thing for Radcliffe is just the approach.
Another ball stung into straightaway center, and Colin Hall is aboard.
The ball was absolutely laced by Colin Hall. But just to finish up on Radcliffe, the approach, because the raw power's there. So as long as he's not swinging at balls out of his zone, he's going to hit some of those home runs, as he certainly does. And this Georgia Tech team is feeling it. They say hitting's contagious. You see it now.
Through 4 innings against Tim Elliott, Georgia Tech had 1 hit. It was a bunt single by Michael Goldberg. 5 runs on 4 hits here in the 5th. And they'll bat around with the 9th batter of the order in Oscar Serratos. Serratos 0 for 2. Breaking ball misses low. In the dirt, gets away from Bigger again. And another wild pitch served up by the Bulldogs. Hall scoots into second.
You saw it come into play on Tristan English's at bat, where he's able to sacrifice fly to the outfield because of one of those wild pitches. And now Colin Hall is in scoring position with 2 outs because of another one.
I count 3 wild pitches this inning. And a 3-1 count on Serratos. In there for a strike.
Doesn't necessarily matter totally because Georgia Tech's been doing it with the long ball as well, but it is uncharacteristic for this Georgia team. We've seen an error today. We've seen a couple wild pitches.
Payoff pitch to Serratos. Reaches down low and fouls it off. Run will be off on the pitch. The 3-2 to Serratos. He hits it hard and through. Hall rounds third. Another run plated by the Jackets. A 2-out, 2-strike base hit by Serratos to make it 7-2.
Well, that wild pitch comes back to haunt the University of Georgia. Colin Hall at first base doesn't advance. Certainly doesn't score on this, but Oscar Serratos doing a great job of taking advantage of the opportunity. Georgia Tech with a 6th spot here in the 5th inning. Go up 7-2.
And 6 spots are scarce against a team with the 5th lowest staff ERA in the country. His 5th inning began with an Austin Wilhite single through the left side, and the junior stands in again. Downstairs 2-0. And whether it's this rivalry or any other rivalry across college baseball, it's worth reminding, a long way from over.
You're absolutely right there.
Another ball line right to third. Shunk makes the grab. But Georgia Tech inflicts a lot of damage on the Bulldogs in the 5th. 6 runs, a pair of bombs. The first from Waddell, the second from Barron Radcliffe, and we head to the 6th. The Jackets on top, 7-2. Well, the rain has since moved out of Atlanta, but Georgia Tech with a 5-run 5th to take the 7-2 lead, make it a 6-run 5th. And don't forget, Tuesday, April 23rd, Georgia Tech and Georgia conclude their 3-game yearly series with the game at SunTrust Park. And what a thrill it is for both players. Both teams play that game at the home of the Atlanta Braves. Routinely draws upwards of 20,000 fans. Aaron Shunk leads off against Willingham, who sticks a strike on the outside corner.
SunTrust game. It's just an awesome spectacle. She mentioned the crowds. It's 50-50 Tech fans and Georgia fans.
A high pop by Shunk. Wilhite has the call. One away.
It's an exciting atmosphere. Before we get there, as you said, long way away from this being over, but this Georgia team finds itself in a position that it hasn't been in a while to Georgia Tech, down 5 runs, having won the last 6.
Bulldogs plated their 2 runs in the first. An RBI doubles by Shunk and Cable. Here's L.J. Talley, the cleanup batter. Willingham, meanwhile, has retired 13 of his last 14. The only one he didn't was a walk. Talley 4th in the SEC in on-base percentage. And curveball paints the outside corner. Bouncing ball deflects off of Willingham, barehanded by Serranos, and on target to first. Kick save and a beauty by Amos Willingham.
And when it's going good for you, it's going really good for you. You see, it goes right off the foot, deflects it right to Serranos. Just a little assist.
1-5-3 on the putout as you see the arm strength by the sophomore Oscar Serranos.
That's a great play over there. Gets a little bit of dap from his pitcher.
Ball 1 to Cable. Danny Hall has really liked his team's defense of late. Played by and large a clean series against Louisville. Swing at the foul by Cable, 2-1.
And that's so big when you get into ACC play. Because a lot of these games are. I mean, you saw the one-run games graphic we showed earlier. A lot of these games are one-run games, and one error can make the difference.
Cable, who had that grand slam versus LSU on Sunday, former junior college All-American at Darden State in Albany, Georgia, lays off and the count goes full. Willingham looking for the shutdown inning after the 6th spot in the Georgia Tech 5th. Cable able to bounce it foul.
And he was way ahead of that one. He's lucky to get the end of the bat on it. Able to foul it off, and still a 3-2 count.
Now up and in. Pitch count nearing 100 now for Willingham. There's Big Arm. He struck out and walked. Big R was a busy man in that 5th inning. As you can see by the britches.
He worked him behind the plate.
Willingham also got the benefit of a long rest as he watched his team hang 6 on the Bulldogs. Chopper to short. Waddell to Wilhite, inning over. And Willingham, as you can see him striding off the mound, fired up. We'll go to the Georgia Tech 6th. Jackets on top, 7-2. First of 3 games this year between the Jackets and Bulldogs. As we head to the bottom of the 6th, Georgia Tech a 7-2 lead. And they broke it open in the 5th inning. Luke Waddell with the 2-run homer. This gave Georgia Tech the 3-2 lead. And then with 2 outs, it was Barron Radcliffe bombing away to the opposite field off of Jack Gowan. Clears the fence And the emotion pouring out as you expect in this rivalry. 6 runs on 5 hits and 10 batters to the plate for Georgia Tech in that 5th. Bidding for more as we move to the 6th. With a new pitcher as well. That's the right-hander Logan Moody.
Moody making his 3rd appearance on the season. 3 innings pitch, has not allowed a run this year yet. 1 walk, 3 strikeouts, and because Georgia went so deep in their bullpen on Sunday, you're getting guys that haven't had a lot of that experience coming into this game, and their job is going to be to hold Georgia Tech where they are now.
Nick Wilhite leads off, and he finds a hole through the right side. A rude greeting to Logan Moody, and it's the first hit of the night for Wilhite.
Everybody's fired up. Saw Nick Wilhite when he got to first base. Watch him right here. He cruised around, and Georgia Tech wiping the chest. We bring up the guy who homered in his last at-bat, Luke Waddell.
It's his 2nd home run of the season. Moody began his career as an outfielder. Transitioned to the mound in 2018. Very versatile player for Scott Strickland. He redshirted last year, made his debut as a pitcher March 2nd of this year versus Georgia Southern. Another one in the dirt.
Last inning, the strike zone is a little elusive for the relievers for Georgia. That was a similar pitch to the one Luke Waddell hit out last time, high and in.
He had a similar idea on that swing.
Exactly. After you hit one out just like that last inning, why not? Just take a shot at it. Why not?
You know, we had talked about the long relationship between Danny Hall and Scott Strickland. Which dates back to their days at Kent State when Danny Hall was the head coach and Scott Strickland was his 2-time all-conference catcher. And after Scott Strickland was released in spring training, he joined Georgia Tech as their volunteer assistant in 1998. It began Scott Strickland's trajectory through college coaching as the walk puts Waddell aboard.
I think it's one of the ultimate compliments when a coach has a player, even if they're extremely good, which Scott Strickland was, and they hire that guy back to be on staff. It's the ultimate sign of respect because you get to know your players really well. So in order to bring a guy on staff and hire him, you got to have great respect for the way he carried himself, obviously the way he played, but knowledge of the game, the ability to communicate. Obviously, Danny Hall saw something in Scott Strickland, and the rest of the country has quickly learned exactly what he saw.
Got Georgia Tech to the NCAA Regionals for the first time since 2011 last year. Of course, was the head coach of that Kent State team that made the Cinderella run to the College World Series in 2012. Goldberg with the bunt single, a walk, and a run scored. Checks his swing. Did not go on appeal, 1-0. We bring up that story because spring training camp is broken. Some guys got that bad news that they don't have a future in their organization. And so there is a lot of uncertainty for a lot of guys who have chased that baseball dream. But you look at a guy like Scott Strickland and you realize there are a lot of ways to still have an impact and influence on this game.
College baseball being so much different than the pros. It's awesome when you're able to especially when you're a guy like Scott Strickland, played at Kent State, was able to go back there and then propelled that into one of the Power 5, if you will, the SEC jobs, one of the best jobs in the country at Georgia. It's really cool to see guys like that be able to find their way to stay involved in the game, as you said. The disappointment that comes with being cut in spring training and knowing that your baseball career is over. Certainly a shocking, it's a shock to the system, but it's great to be able to stay involved.
3-0 on Goldberg. When you have a rivalry game like this, you can be assured there was no chance of a letdown emotionally from either team after their series wins this past weekend. Georgia versus number 10 LSU and Georgia Tech versus number 4 Louisville. Here's the 3-1 to the man who's third in the nation in batting average. Swings right through it to load the count.
Yeah, and I can tell you from experience, there is no doubt in my mind that this Georgia Tech baseball team knew that they have not beat Georgia in the last 6 attempts. When we played Georgia in 2008, all we heard about was the fact that we hadn't beat them in 7 straight. So these guys certainly have heard the noise around it.
Moody trying to bounce back from 3-0. Up high, the base is loaded. So consecutive walks issued by the right-hander. And now staring at bases loaded. And the man who's cranked out a dozen home runs this year in Kyle McCann.
Kyle McCann has had a flair for the dramatic over the past, well, I guess his entire career, honestly. Number of grand slams he's hit. It seems like he relishes these spots. It's the most dangerous situation to see Kyle McCann in.
Took a home run cup but ran out of bat. Nice pitch placement by Moody. McCann was 2 of 10, did walk 4 times in the Louisville series. Average still a healthy 365. A strikeout and a pair of walks tonight. Now behind 0-2.
Yeah, now Kyle McCann has to be unselfish, put the ball in play, score another run. With the way that this outfield has shifted and the infield has shifted, like to see him stay the other way. Inside out, this ball hit it hard to the left side. If Moody decides to stay away from him and try and go something on the outside of the plate.
Wind has picked back up again over the last 5 to 10 minutes, blowing towards right. Lays off the high heat from Moody. Wind typically favors the left-handers at Russ Chandler Stadium. You get a great skyline view at Russ Chandler Stadium, but the downside is the wind typically blows toward right, so not only do the pitchers not have that luxury, but also they got to face a left-handed power bat like McCann with a wind that typically blows to right.
I wonder if that's part of the recruiting pitch that Danny Hall has when he's recruiting guys to come to Georgia Tech. Hey, not only are we a hitter-friendly ballpark to our left-handed hitter, but the wind blows that way too.
Swing and a miss, and McCann down on strikes. Moody was able to work him away.
It's a great job. Similar pitch to the one that you saw on the first pitch of the at-bat to Kyle McCann, where he fouls it off the very tip of the bat. Just a little ahead of this one. Kyle McCann goes down on strikes.
Base is still loaded with the double play in order for Tristan English, who's had a couple of sac flies tonight. Infield shifts to the pole side for English. Preseason All-American, laid off, ball bounces in the dirt. Now it's going to be a throw to the first instead. And the ball was dropped by the first baseman, but they say on the exchange he lost it, but now another run comes in. So 2 runs score for now on the play on a ball that bounced in front of Bigger. At third base, Wilhite broke for a home. Bigger might not have seen him, might not have trusted that he could cut him off and lay the tag, so he threw on to English instead. 1 run we know for certain is coming in, but was that play dead after Rogers took that ball out of his hand?
Great job of playing through the end of the play from Georgia Tech. Danny Hall immediately goes out. Let's see this. I wasn't sure that it hit off the bat of Tristan English, but he certainly was. And without seeing that a little bit faster or a little bit closer, I'm not sure. Georgia Tech able to bring 2 around. They have gone over to the monitor to review this. I'm sure we will get another look at it.
Well, Wilhite scored from third. That run has to stand. I think the question now is Waddell. He came around from second, but was that play ruled dead before he touched home? There was plenty of confusion after Rogers tried to take that ball out of his glove after pulling in to throw at first.
It'll be interesting to see because this was a ball that was tough to handle. I think it's going to be, obviously with that angle, it was so quick, it's going to be tough for us to see, but you can see Rogers' back is turned to the first base umpire on that one. And it snow cones at the end, and as he comes up is when he drops it. Craig Barron, his left hand was going towards that glove. Craig Barron says it's on the transfer, but this will give us a better look of exactly what happened. Oh, we got teased.
Were you surprised that Bigger didn't try to go home? It looked like Moody was going to be on home plate, at least to make it a close play.
I was a little surprised because I thought there was going to be enough time as we get the...
Oh, now English is called safe. Wow.
I think the fact that you could see the ball the entire time, you never saw it go all the way into Rogers' glove, that's the reason that play was called. And Andy, that's the quickest review we've had all year. they were definite on that one. We didn't even get to see the second angle.
So Goldberg is at second. English is now at first. That should go down as an error. Hasn't yet been put on the board.
The other important thing is that the run that Waddell scored stands now, as that play obviously was not dead. Good job by Luke Waddell playing all the way through until play was stopped.
2 on, still 1 out. Here's Baron Radcliffe, who bombed away for a 2-run homer his last time. So there's a strike 1 on the outside corner. A wild sequence there with bases loaded. And it results in 2 runs for Georgia Tech. No outs for Georgia. On a ball that might not have crawled beyond 10 feet in front of home plate.
And one that was tough to see. It was a check swing by Tristan English. It wasn't even a full swing. And Georgia Tech's able to take advantage. Going back to what we were talking about, though, I was a little surprised that Bigard did not try and go to the plate. But you have to make that decision so quickly that I think he wasn't sure that he could, as you said, cut Wilhite off. As it stands, that is a huge error for the University of Georgia.
Uncharacteristic of them to have 2 errors. Like we told you, tied for 4th in the nation in fielding percentage, .982, and they set a school record for fielding percentage last year. Could be consecutive top 10 finishes nationally for Georgia in fielding percentage. Low again to Radcliffe. It's 3-1.
I'll tell you what, there's a guy who's going to sleep well tonight. It's Bigard behind the plate. He has been worked by this pitching staff in terms of blocking balls, moving side to side. He's had to field his position a couple of times. It has been, I guess it's all in a day's work for a catcher, but I'm tired of looking at him.
3-1 to Radcliffe. Swinging away, comes up empty.
Moody has done a really good job. I'm not sure if that's a true changeup, just taking a little bit off of that pitch. Had McCann on it. Now throws it to Radcliffe and got the big swing on 3-1.
Moody did strike out McCann this inning. See what he dials up on 3-2 to Radcliffe. Swing and a miss. Down low, and Radcliffe down on strikes. Moody has issued 2 walks this inning, but he's also recorded a pair of impressive strikeouts.
to the biggest power hitters in Georgia Tech's lineup, that one looked like the way Radcliffe reacted to it was almost like a split finger. Dove down at the very end. Didn't look like it was any sort of slider, but could have just been a fastball down in the dirt.
Colin Hall singled and scored his last time. A 6th spot in the Georgia Tech 5th. 2 more here in the 6th. Hall checks his swing, didn't go. Nothing can make you forget about the sting of a 9th inning loss like the one Georgia Tech suffered Sunday at number 4 Louisville, quite like a rivalry game, and Georgia Tech has been locked and loaded these middle innings.
They've been fired up. They've responded exactly the way Coach Hall would have wanted them to respond.
Up and away, 2-1.
Especially after not really getting anything going in the first 4 innings. It was that big 5th inning that was led off by an Austin Wilhite single. Got him going. Other than that, before that, it had just been an infield single, a bunt hit.
Tim Elliott did his part. Spins away foul. And it's 2-2 on Hall. Georgia team that's off to its best start since 2009. Highest ranking as well since 2009 when they spent several weeks parked at number 1. Now stretching the pitch by Moody. Another 2-2. Almost hits Hall.
My memory serves me correct. Colin Hall, one of the only guys in the Georgia Tech lineup without the arm pad. Funniest thing to me is to see the coaches when those guys get on base. You can almost tell how successful the inning has been by the number of pads on the first base coach. It's fantastic.
The amount of equipment they're now wearing. Hall batting .375 over his last 6 games. The payoff from Moody is banged down the line. This could score a pair. King has to track it up against the wall. And Colin Hall puts the Jackets into double figures. Now 11-2 as English comes around from first.
Excellent piece of hitting by Colin Hall, turning on that ball, and it looks like Tristan English didn't really want to score from first base. I think he pumped the brakes to third, and third base coach James Ramsey said, "No, sir, keep going, please." See, a couple runs scoring, and Georgia Tech extends this lead. Players in the dugout getting a workout, and English, even with that quad, still maybe not 100% able to motor around and go first to home, excuse me.
So 4 more for the Jackets in the 6th. Oscar Serrato's hit a 2-out RBI single back in the 5th. Georgia Tech did, Roddy, exactly as they had hoped, which was try to run up Tim Elliott's pitch count. And as terrific as he performed, couldn't get out of the 5th inning. And knowing how many arms were expended by Scott Strickland and the Bulldogs to get that series win against LSU, and knowing they wouldn't be full strength behind him, and having to go with guys who haven't seen a lot of high leverage situations, that's what helped maybe result in this heavy damage inflicted by the Jackets in the 5th and 6th. And, well, we might be picking up some viewers on the way home.
Hey, tune on in. But I think the other part of this that it can't be forgotten, too, is that Georgia's got a quick turnaround. In a couple of days, they have an SEC series against Kentucky. So while you might have had some pitchers that could go today, Scott Strickland had to measure the fact that they may not be able to rebound after pitching on Sunday, Tuesday, and then Thursday. So you just sit those guys down and bring in some arms that maybe are a little more lightly used, particularly on the weekends. So
bouncer back behind second. Dropped by Talley. And now runner breaks for home, throw down, and the tag applied. Colin Hall couldn't put on the brakes, and Talley spotted him. And the inning comes to a close, but not before 4 more Georgia Tech runs. We head to the 7th, 11-2 Jackets. The Rec made its annual pregame appearance before the start of tonight's game. First of 3 rivalry games this season between Georgia Tech and Georgia. And after Georgia led 2-1 going into the bottom of the 5th, the Jackets have exploded. 6 runs in the 5th, 4 more in that 6th inning, an 11-2 lead. And perhaps a resounding way for Georgia Tech to snap this 6-game Georgia win streak in the series. Amos Willingham back on his 98th pitch is a ball outside to Rogers. Willingham has not allowed a hit since the 2nd. And that was from Rogers. Willingham so far 6 innings, 4 hits, 2 walks, 8 strikeouts. And 3 of the 4 hits he allowed came in that first inning, all on doubles.
That kid's a member of the Lubbock baseball team. They're famous now. Did you see that?
Internet famous.
Yeah.
The best kind of famous.
I mean, when you recognize The Rock heading down I-75 and he gives you a shout out on his Instagram, he only has like 100 million followers. I wonder if that kid was one of them.
3-1 from Willingham is hit high in the air to left. Hall didn't see it initially. Now races over and sticks the glove up for out number 1. And I think the Rocks' good luck rubbed off on that Lubbock team because they won their next game 25-1.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. I have a feeling it's not the only time this year that they've beaten somebody that bad, as you see the Amos Willingham breakdown.
And perhaps that young man out to support a product of his Lubbock School program, private school in suburban Atlanta, Aaron Shunk. What a fine player he's become for UGA. Here's Randon Jernigan. Jernigan has struck out twice. But Jernigan's week, Roddy, was already made because he made SportsCenter's number 2 highlight on Monday for a leaping catch up over the left field wall in their series finale versus LSU. And that is not Jernigan, although we still give him credit for making SportsCenter's top 10.
When you make SportsCenter's top 10, you can take the late innings off.
That is Tate, and he bloops this into right center. Connor Tate.
center fielder, number 1.
Amos Willingham just hung that one a little bit. You see the reaction. It's almost right after he threw it. He knew that one was not exactly the placement that he would have liked, and Tate's able to get a base hit as a pinch hitter.
Brings up the center fielder Maxwell. That was Georgia's first hit since Rogers' single led off the second. Maxwell is 0 for 2. Waves and misses. I'd be wondering, in an 11-2 game, your starter is 106 pitches deep. Why is Willingham still out there? Well, number one, he is their designated midweek starter. And also, I think Danny Hall recognizes that his bullpen has caused him a few too many cases of heartburn this year. So if he can extend Willingham for another batter or two, he'll do that as Maxwell stripes one into right.
And we talked about the fact that Georgia with Tim Elliott is going to certainly lean on him a little bit later. Amos Willingham is going to play a big part for this Georgia Tech team going forward as well. So if he's able to stretch out a little bit and work his pitch count, practice working deep into games like this, and it only helps Georgia Tech down the line. But it looks like that will be the last pitch that we'll see from Willingham.
The freshman lefty Luke Barknicki ready when needed. And will he come at the top of the Georgia order after consecutive base hits given up? Danny Hall might make the call, but it was a fine night and a fine debut in this rivalry series for the junior right-hander Amos Willingham. His night is done as we continue in the 7th. Miles for the junior Amos Willingham. He's responsible for the runners at first and second, but 6 in the 3rd innings, allowed 6 hits, 2 earned runs for now, 2 walks, and 8 strikeouts. And he was magnificent after settling down from the 2nd to the 6th. Georgia Tech had his left-hander Luke Barknicki ready, but they also had their right-hander Jake Lee. And it's Lee who gets the first call out of the Tech bullpen.
The righty coming up. Danny Hall loves to play the right-on-right matchups. And you see Jake Lee, 6 appearances on the season at 4.91 ERA. And he's going to have quite the cushion to work with he enters this game, and for Lee it's going to be all about preserving what that man did. Amos Willingham was truly fantastic after that first inning, a real gem. He pitched in a high stakes environment, rival top 5 team by some polls, number 6 in our rankings, and he was fantastic today.
He had a streak where he retired 15 of 17. And the only base runners who reached did so via the walk. Now trying to urge out his right-hander Lee, who's appearing for his 7th time, 3 2/3 innings of work. Top of the order, and Cam Shepard began this game with a double. And I think that was what was most impressive about Amos Willingham. He gave up 3 doubles. Did strike out the side in the first, but also gave up 3 doubles, 2 runs. Maybe he just needed to ride out those early nerves, but he left those behind in the first.
That's a good point. Jake Lee appeared really briefly in the weekend series at Louisville, pitching a 1/3 of an inning. Struck out the 1 batter he faced.
Spins another one in for a strike, 0-2. 43 career multi-hit games for the junior from Duluth, Georgia, as you see the rain starting to fall again. Also tied for the SEC lead with 24 walks, but behind 0-2 on Lee. Pops this into right center. Will Height shades over. 2 away.
Then he pushed that ball a little further towards right than we would typically see on a non-windy day, but I think Will Height able to track it down with ease and these Georgia batters coming up, fighting through the raindrops and deficit. Chilly night now. And Jake Lee is trying to get out of here as quickly as possible for the Jackets.
Faces Riley King, who's 0 for 3. Checked his swing. An appeal. He didn't go. Blast this out to left, but again, that wind is pushing towards right. And it'll hit the parachute in medium depth for Colin Hall. Jake Lee retires both batters he faces and holds the Bulldogs scoreless as we stretch in Atlanta. To the bottom of the 7th on this Tuesday night in Atlanta, Georgia Tech 11, Georgia 2. And if you're new to this broadcast, the 7th inning is our time for trivia, Roddy Jones, and here it is.
Oh, it's my favorite time.
Of course, we had to do a Georgia Tech, Georgia-themed trivia. Did Bobby Dodd have more wins over Georgia as Georgia Tech's head coach of baseball or football?
Okay. Bobby Dodd, legendary head coach of Georgia Tech.
And a lot of people don't realize that his first 7 years on the Flats when he was an assistant to William Alexander, he spent his springs as the head baseball coach on the Flats. The 22 seasons as Georgia Tech's head coach in football, 7 as their head coach in baseball. Did he have more wins over Georgia in baseball or football? As we take a look at the new pitcher, the right-handed freshman Darren Pasqua.
Pasqua, another guy making his 4th appearance on the season. 1.80 ERA, 5 innings pitched. He's given up 1 earned run on the season. Struck out 2, walked 1. Back to the trivia. So let's break this down.
And again, it is always a treat when we can hear your deductive reasoning aloud on the broadcast.
Yeah,
but fire away.
I don't know how much of a treat it is because a lot of times it's very flawed. But I'm going to assume.
Punched into left center, but Maxwell gets over and denies Austin Wilhite for the first out. We'll let you think about it a little more. Ordinarily, we reveal the answer after the first out, but Austin was a little quick on the click there.
You didn't know it was trivia time. It's fine. But I'm going to assume that Bobby Dodd faced Georgia 22 times at least as their head coach there. So obviously quite a number of chances. 7 years as the baseball coach. I'm going to say he faced them 21-ish times, possibly as many as 28. Georgia Tech was national championship caliber under Bobby Dodd, so now I'm not exactly sure what Georgia was during the mid-50s and late 40s, although World War II certainly could have affected
Are we talking
Georgia.
Football or baseball?
We're talking football
Still
right
talking
now.
football.
Still
Okay.
talking football.
Okay.
And baseball, World War II would have affected him as well, especially if it was early. I don't know how his baseball stint overlapped there. I'm going to go football.
Ball slapped deep in the hole, diving stop by Talley, but all he can do is smother it. Nick Wilhite is a 2nd consecutive base hit. All right, you ran out of time. What is it going to be, football or baseball?
Football. I'm going football. All right!
Chalk one up for Roddy Jones. Woo! He went 12-10 against Georgia in football. He won 9 games over Georgia in his 7 seasons as the Yellow Jackets head baseball coach. And oftentimes, Georgia and Georgia Tech in the mid to late 30s, they would meet anywhere between 2 and 4 times during the season. And that rain is starting to pelt down now.
That was a good trivia question. I love the ones that are 50-50 because I've always got a shot.
We'll get that straightened out for the weekend series. Top of the order now in Waddell. He's walked twice, belted a 2-run homer, and he scored 3 times. This rain is really starting to lash down.
And I'm not saying this has anything to do with it, but I always wonder if it had started raining like this in the 2nd inning at a 2-1 ball game, would we pause play? But certainly here in this game, everyone eager to get it done. So we're going to play in a little bit of adverse circumstances.
Strike makes it 2-1. New catcher now here in the 7th inning. Shane Marshall takes the place of Big R, and Tate takes over for Jernigan in left. Scott Strickland thinking ahead, particularly with his catcher to that Thursday through Saturday series in Lexington versus Kentucky.
You were telling us a little bit about your experiences at Kentucky a little bit earlier in the old ballpark.
Cliff Hagan Stadium.
Some of your fond memories.
Fond's one way to describe it. It's a bit of a bandbox. Outfield, a little lumpy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Slightly challenging terrain, if you will.
Always interesting when you can stand on the third baseline and see the undulations of the chalk down left field. But of course, they have moved now to a brand new facility that's right across from Commonwealth Stadium. So a new era into which Georgia steps this weekend. Well, it looked like it might have slipped out of Pasqua's glove, and you see that the rain, just the sheen of those raindrops on those red uniforms now as we continue to play in the bottom of the 7th. Doug Vines, our home plate umpire, is taking his mask off, asking Pasco if he wants to do baseball.
Georgia will face a Kentucky team this week that struggled out of SEC play, getting swept in a couple of series by LSU and by Texas A&M, and it looks like they're going to take the players off the field as rain picks up even more.
It is really starting to come down. And so we stop play here in the bottom of the 7th, and Georgia Tech leading Georgia 11-2. Stand by. Indoor rain delay here in Atlanta and clean old-fashioned hay.
Get fans your attention, please. Emergency officials are monitoring severe weather in the distance.
Tonight's game has been called on account of rain, and it ends after 7 innings with Georgia Tech beating number 6 Georgia 11-2. The Yellow Jackets snap a 6-game losing streak in this series, riding a terrific start by Amos Willingham and big innings, Roddy, in the 5th and 6th.
And Georgia Tech, in large part, was held very quiet early in the game through 4 innings, but those big innings and the long ball especially really propelled them. A great win for Georgia Tech.
Once again, for analyst Roddy Jones, I'm Andy Demetra saying so long from Russ Chandler Stadium. Again, our final, Georgia Tech 11, Georgia 2. This has been a presentation of ESPN.